I'm Liz O'Day, and I'm the CEO and founder of Olaris. Thank you for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about our company. Olaris is a precision medicine company that aims to fundamentally transform how diseases are diagnosed and treated. We do this by marrying together metabolomics with machine learning to produce what we call BORs, or Biomarkers of Response, that can tell which specific patients are going to benefit from which specific therapies. Now, obviously, we're not the only folks in the precision medicine space, but the lion's share of work to date has all been focused on a genomic approach, either looking at DNA and RNA. While we here at Olaris are certainly fans of sequencing, this really relays more of a risk factor information of what could happen. If we want to understand what is actually happening inside of a patient, we need to go downstream of the genome and also take in input from other data sets, such as your microbiome, your diet, your environment, and even epigenetic factors. Fortunately, all of this information both is affected by and influences your metabolome, and that's what our Biomarker of Response platform is based off of. We've developed a robust metabolomics-based discovery platform that lets us get a full comprehensive picture of what's going on inside of a patient. And what this has enabled us to do is uncover metabolite signatures that differentiate patients who had one outcome versus the other. The underlying platform was based off of my doctoral work at Harvard, and it combines world-leading NMR-based metabolomics with mass spectrometry to be able to detect and quantify a large breadth of metabolites in a very accurate and reproducible manner. We then pass this information into our machine learning and AI platform to be able to uncover the signatures that can differentiate patients that had these diverse outcomes. And then what makes Olaris truly special is that we're an end-to-end solution, where in addition to doing the metabolomic profiling and the AI, we also have all of our analysis rooted in a deep understanding of biology, where we go back to try to understand the mechanisms that could be contributing to disease etiology or resistance. And what this has enabled us to do is work with multiple stakeholders to improve how drugs work. This can be through biopharma to help them accelerate their therapeutic development programs, or directly with patients and physicians to transform patient care. And today I'm going to tell you about two case examples that highlight this work. The first example I'll describe features work we recently presented at the American Association for Cancer Research AACR annual meeting, wherein we discovered a BOR that correlates with drug responsiveness for GIST patients, gastrointestinal stromal tumor patients. GIST patients both need and deserve better diagnostics, and this is because recurrence and drug resistance remain huge problems. Estimates suggest that about 50% of patients will relapse after surgery, and about 85% of patients will develop drug resistance at some point during their treatment. And at present, there are no biomarkers to help guide who should get which therapy and when. And this is the exact type of problem the Olaris BOR platform can solve, wherein we can uncover metabolite signatures that correlate with specific drug response to be able to guide therapeutic selection, as well as to optimize the sequence of therapies. As a first step, we received serial plasma samples from 39 GIST patients that were treated with an experimental drug at MD Anderson. We isolated their metabolites, we ran it through our metabolomics platform, we passed it over to our data analytics tool, and we're able to build a BOR score based on the differential expression of these metabolites that could separate the patients who saw their tumors shrink, which is what we want in response to this therapy, versus those that did not. And the results of the study were truly quite striking. Wherein what we found is that our BOR score was highly correlated with tumor growth or reduction. And what this allowed us to do is then make predictions on an independent test set of patient samples from a baseline plasma sample or after 1 month and 8 months of treatment that had incredibly high accuracy to be able to predict which patients would see their tumors shrink on this particular drug. And while appropriate caution must be applied due to the small sample size, I'm excited to report that we are both expanding and setting up prospective studies to validate these results. And what it could suggest is that there are subsets of patients who should be evaluated for this drug earlier, and collectively we're working towards optimizing GIST care. This provides one of the ways that we aim to work with biopharma, wherein we want to use our BOR platform to help you gather as much information as possible about how your drugs can work, and also identify the patients that are most likely to benefit so that we can get them access to these groundbreaking therapies as soon as possible. If you're interested to learn more, please contact us after the conference. The second example I'll walk you through is a precision medicine diagnostic that we're developing internally and in collaboration with physicians and patients across the globe to improve kidney transplant care. So chronic kidney disease is a huge problem in the United States and globally, and can lead to end-stage renal disease when the kidneys stop functioning. At this point, the majority of patients will end up on dialysis, which is wildly inefficient, wherein only about 35% of patients will survive beyond 5 years, and incredibly costly, tallying about $28 billion a year. A far superior option is to get a kidney transplant, which has a greater than 80% 5-year survival rate and significantly reduced healthcare costs. But the problem is there's not that many kidneys to go around, with only about 20,000 new kidney transplants a year, and it's incredibly clinically complex to manage these patients, with a high need for both personalized and precision medicine tools to optimize their care. In fact, one of the most significant challenges for both patients and physicians is to find the right balance of immunosuppressants. So if a patient gets too little of immunosuppressant, they can become under-immunosuppressed, which can lead to graft rejection and ultimately graft loss. But if a patient gets too much immunosuppressant, they become at risk for a whole slew of complications, including opportunistic infections such as pallomavirus nephropathy, diabetes, cancer, nephrotoxicity, and more. And each one of these complications can also lead to graft loss. And so while there are some amazing products on the market to detect under-immunosuppression and rejection, to date there really hasn't been much for over-immunosuppression. And thus I'm pleased to announce Olaris is developing both the best-in-class and first-in-class precision medicine tools to be able to monitor and detect over-immunosuppression. Because the thing about over-immunosuppression is, if we can detect it early enough, it will allow physicians to therapeutically intervene and mitigate many of the risks associated with these complications. In fact, that's why we're so passionate about bringing this diagnostic to patients, because it has the potential to save lives and reduce healthcare costs. For example, there are about 200,000 patients living with a kidney transplant in the United States, each one worrying if they're being appropriately immunosuppressed. There will be a subset of patients that are over-immunosuppressed and monitored through routine clinical testing, which at present leads to about 7,500 patients each year losing their graft to PVAN, which is one of the complications associated with over-immunosuppression, known as pallomavirus nephropathy. Patients that lose their graft to PVAN experience one of 3 options. Sadly, many will die. Others will go back on dialysis, and a small subset will go on dialysis and then receive a second kidney transplant. Collectively, this leads to about 3,000 deaths a year and over $500 million being spent in the management of the single complication associated with over-immunosuppression. The Olaris diagnostic is poised to transform all of this, and because we'll be able to identify patients at risk for PVAN earlier, we will significantly reduce the number of grafts that are lost to this complication, and every single year be able to reduce the deaths and the costs associated with PVAN rejection. And again, using the PVAN over-immunosuppression complication as an example, in order to discover these diagnostics, we have been working directly with physicians and patients. We're in an original pilot study with the University of Leuven, one of Europe's top transplant centers. We received urine samples from kidney transplant patients. We isolated their metabolites and we passed it through our Metabolomics and machine learning platform so that we could identify and build a biomarker of response score based on the differential expression of these metabolites to be able to separate patients with high accuracy for their likelihood to develop a PVAN infection. This work is now being both analytically and clinically validated in additional studies. And what I would say it is both enabling and empowering is the long-term longitudinal monitoring of kidney transplant patients. PVAN, for example, can strike kidney transplant patients anytime between 3 months and 18 months post-transplant. What our test will allow physicians to be able to do is monitor changes in an individual's patient's risk profile and enable the physician to tailor treatment for that particular patient. And while we're focused on kidney transplant as our first area, over-immunosuppression is a problem that plagues all of transplant and, in fact, extends into autoimmune disease. And Olaris is actively engaged in conversations to determine if and where our diagnostics could improve outcomes in each of these therapeutic areas. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. Olaris is committed to developing diagnostics that improve patient outcomes, improve the patient experience, and reduce healthcare costs. And we know to do this, we need to work together with all stakeholders. And so we welcome additional conversations from patients, physicians, and payers to help us achieve this goal. And so in conclusion, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to learn about Olaris and support us in our mission to remove the guesswork that's associated with medicine. By working together, we know that we can get the right patient, the right drug, at the right dose, at the right time. I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to following up further.